Greetings, welcome. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be with you. Let's do an experiment. We have two pieces of wood, different sizes and different weights. Let's drop them and see what happens. Look, they're falling at the same rate. In an experiment lasting about 1 second, we began undermining an incorrect theory that prevailed for more than 1.5 millennia, that heavier objects fall faster than lighter ones. The reason why Aristotle's theory prevailed for more than 1,500 years is not because of a limit of the mind, anyone could drop objects, but of the heart, the rarity of the courage to pursue and to stand up for the truth against prevalent social pressure. Yet eventually Galileo was successful in transforming consensus, enabling humanity to advance. As we'll discuss later in this video, we're in a related situation today. If not trusting today's counterparts to Galileo, you can prove to yourself, to your own satisfaction, that there's a lot more to physics than the leading theories of Newton and even Einstein. But first, let's discuss how this video is organized. We previously explained that our soul family is real, beginning with spirituality and the inevitability of the situation from the standpoint that the Earth is not the center of the universe, and then proceeding to the immense multi-decade unprosecuted whistleblower movement led by Dr. Stephen Greer. We could approach the situation from any angle, as truth within this context is where all paths eventually converge. We'll look at the situation from these perspectives, including those previously noted, roughly analogous to the chronology of my personal pursuit of truth. The intent is not to be redundant, but to be fair and informative. As the whistleblower case is sufficient to entirely prove the reality of the situation, our primary objective of exploring other paths is not to redo the work we've already done, but to gather key insights that are most notable relative to an open-minded, open-ended pursuit of the truth. I'll be introducing a body of reference resources that can be helpful in acclimating to this subject. I'm not saying that I've necessarily read every one word for word, or that each work is necessarily perfect. What I am saying is that in each case, the baby is worth more than the bathwater, if there is any bathwater at all. We'll look at the situation from these 8 angles, beginning with spirituality. If we consider every possible discipline, and ask which one upon mastery would offer the opportunity of the greatest, most unlimited practical potential, it would be spirituality, from the standpoint of encompassing the metaphysical. In terms of exploring the field, we may then wonder, is additional, non-mandatory but helpful context available to help justify intensive exploration? And the answer is yes, the global ubiquity of spiritual convictions. What about a primary concern? Our primary concern with the field of spirituality is the need for freedom. Freedom is key. If our quest for the purest truth is contained within an institution that has already decided to be fundamentally aligned with particular fixed truths, then we are effectively working for a judge who has rendered their verdict before hearing the case. The reliable discovery of truth requires the backdrop of freedom. If you don't have sufficient funding for independence, if your survival needs can compromise your conclusions, how reliable will your outcomes be? If we look at this side by side, truth is facilitated by open-ended, freedom-based, transparent, perpetual, comprehensive initiatives, whereas groupthink is facilitated by prejudged, dependency-based, opaque, time-restricted, scope-restricted initiatives. So from this vantage point, a key quagmire emerges. Our opacity-based, competition-based, dependency-based, time-restricted, scope-restricted financial system is not supportive of the reliable, ongoing, open-ended revelation of comprehensive truth. Our financial system is restraining our spiritual growth. In our second video, we talked about the paramount value of love across spirituality and everything else. Let's keep that in mind looking at the breakdown now regarding practice. Truth is characterized by courageous, visionary debate regarding substantive, wise practice. whereas groupthink is characterized by timid, short-sighted consensus regarding superficial, loud theory. The true sanctity of love can keep countervailing arrangements from collapsing for a long time, until love outlasts such subversion. In terms of the global ubiquity of spirituality, the Pew Research Center has established that over 80% of the world population is spiritually affiliated. Yet individual key religions have strong geographic correlations. The first point is cursory, widespread evidence of a metaphysical reality, and we would expect that, fully pursued, this path would ultimately yield complete evidence. The second point, though, correlates with the previously discussed limits. Individual key religions have strong geographic correlations, yet the comprehensive, unbiased pursuit of objective truth should not yield dramatically different outcomes just with geography. For the sake of discussion, if one particular religion were best, there should be singular global consensus. If the religions were all tied in value, there should be equal affiliations independent of geography. And if the religions arranged in any other way by value, those preference dispersions still should not be dependent upon geography. Yet none of these are the case. The terms comprehensive and unbiased come into focus. As discussed in our analysis of religion within the video on love, a comprehensive comparative analysis of all the world's religions and belief systems, including their archaeological histories and complications of historical, political influences, is clearly beyond the attainability of the average person's lifetime. So it's certainly expected and fully understandable that comprehensive analyses are not operative. Valuations of religions may also be biased. While the ubiquity of spirituality strongly indicates that the field is real, the takeaway here is that we, not the quote other person, should be humble, recognizing that we always have more to learn. At the end of the day, we want to believe what's true, right? Doesn't the health of our soul warrant fully informed decision-making? Doesn't our soul deserve the truth? Isn't the most objective truth supposed to matter, especially in regard to what we hold most sacred? If we care about living, shouldn't we care about doing it right? Isn't truth supposed to withstand scrutiny? How do we know that we have the best deal relative to a great deal without honest comparison shopping? What do you think a good deal for this car would be? Where would you be happy closing the deal? Do you know what's behind these different price tags? Let's find out. To grow as we should, we must be willing to value others and their views, more so than attend to the continuity of our own personal comfort and convenience. Isn't that what love is all about in the first place? To summarize the vantage point of spirituality, the metaphysical realm logically offers the greatest practical potential of any discipline. There is also globally widespread cursory evidence of its reality, as well as globally widespread evidence that we should be humble, recognizing that we have a lot more to learn. Let's turn to the whistleblower case. Although we previously went through this, it's an important component of our overall analysis, because it concisely and conclusively takes us all the way to the recognition that our soul family is real, enabling us to efficiently examine other angles of approach, primarily from the standpoints of their integrated key insights. So in terms of logical proof, is a conclusive case available? Yes. We laid it out in the previous video, titled Truth. In terms of a foundation for advancement, Can we proceed now to learn about and to grow with our soul family without further debating if they are real? Yes. Yes, we can. On the screen are key resources related to the disclosure movement, led by Dr. Stephen Greer. The feature film Unacknowledged is a foremost credible introduction to the reality and importance of our soul family. The book Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge dives much deeper, with an intricate expose of the corrupt concealment of our soul family. The book is also an excellent overall resource, with concisely delivered, highly informative content. Although Unacknowledged is an excellent film, its case can be strongly supplemented upon reviewing the available testimony under oath to Congress as presented in the original 2001 disclosure event at the National Press Club, the full duration of which is available on YouTube. And of course, we have Dr. Greer's set of library recommendations, which is an excellent resource for launching a personal reference collection or for initially exploring particular subset topics. To recap this angle of approach, a conclusive case of logical proof is available, so we can focus upon learning about our family without revisiting whether they're real. And from this foundation, with the paramount discretion of our hearts, we can tentatively consider credentialed guidance on this subject to be directionally accurate, unless or until illustrated otherwise. Let's turn now to advanced physics. The first question at hand is how? How does reality work? And then we can actually turn to why, because as disciplines converge, we can lovingly request and access the answer to why does reality operate as it does? Let's envision a plot of events. On the vertical axis, we would have the frequency of occurrence, the regularity. And on the horizontal axis, we would have the uniqueness of character. We can see how the plot forms. Near the vertical axis in brown, we would have a large number of low uniqueness events. And near the horizontal axis in purple, we would have a small number of high uniqueness events. The aspiration of physics, of course, is to explain them all. Following Galileo's work, Newtonian physics was introduced. It condenses to 3 laws: that inertia is operative, that force, mass, and acceleration are related, and that every force has an equal opposing force. Although Newtonian physics does an excellent job to this day of explaining many common dynamics, it turned out not to explain everything. Einstein's initial theory of relativity turned out to explain more peripheral phenomena. Relativity condenses to the points that the speed of light is constant from every frame of reference, and that correspondingly, both time and a distance are relative. The theory is advantageous for timekeeping in outer space, yet it still doesn't explain everything. A well-established experiment, known as the double-slit experiment, is the backdrop to an ultimately far broader model of reality. You can read about it in sources such as Forbes and Popular Mechanics, or in detail in the book Biocentrism by Dr. Robert Lanza, which we'll introduce later. In its simplest form, the experiment involves an electron source, a screen with 2 narrow slits, and a detector. One at a time, electrons are sequentially released, each with an equal chance of passing through one of the 2 slits. If the researcher does become conscious through measurement of the slit through which each electron happens to pass, then the detector displays a pattern consistent with matter. On the other hand, if the researcher does not become conscious of the slit through which each electron happens to pass, then the detector displays a pattern consistent with waves. So as counterintuitive as it may be, it is established that the phenomenon of matter is induced upon conscious perception. The holographic model of the universe, which we can describe in shorthand as holography, adds an obvious component. We start out with the recognition that energy is only perceived as matter upon our type of conscious observation. And then we recognize that the micro level is what comprises the macro level. Let's consider the implications. They are very profound, and we'll take this very slowly. Carefully examining holography, we can read into it 4 key points, each of which are separately supported. Again, energy is only perceived as matter upon our type of conscious observation. Because any one of us induces the effect for all, consciousness is ultimately singular. Because we, as well as everything else, are comprised of energy, consciousness is present everywhere. Because not all forms of this omnipresent consciousness induce the perception of matter for us, other types of consciousness than ours exist. As consciousness can process non-physical realms, such as those of ideas, other realms than ours exist. We can establish a profound understanding of how, and with this premise, we can engage broader consciousness in order to determine whether our logic is correct, learn related details, ask why, and thus begin to bridge disciplines, or ask anything, and thus begin to bridge everything. Research in this field indicates that the answer as to why this arrangement exists is that singular consciousness is constraining itself to limiting paradigms in order to experience love. Thus, as we discussed in the second video, love is the greatest power. Consider the implications of what we have here. Every piece of reality being a transitory limiting shell of a singular overall conscious being. Every human, every plant, every grain of sand, everything that exists being a shell of the same overall being. You're never alone. Consciousness is all around you, all the time. Ultimately, none of us are separable from the rest. We are all the same one. Yet from our local frames of reference, if we were to draw a circle around Earth and describe her consciousness, the name Gaia is often used. Each of us are comprised of Gaia's mere surface grains. In truly harmonious existence, we must recognize the immense stature of her scale. In acclimating to the reality around us, we want to consider the implications of perspective evolutionary paths entirely beyond the normal service range of our senses, as well as operations beyond the constraints of Newtonian physics, beyond the restrictions of time and space, and even beyond the limits of relativity itself. In the reality in which we find ourselves, a soul is a relatively discrete element of consciousness, and life just refers to one possible state of a soul for a duration. Again, we are all the same being within a self-created venue to experience love through free choice and an intense, yet superficial, backdrop of separation. Telepathy refers to metaphysical information transfer, where metaphysical means the use of holography as opposed to simpler physics models. Channeling refers to information transfer from a cooperative source, such as a broader, wiser form of yourself. So we can conceptualize channeling as just thinking, or as a thought experiment, requiring only an open heart and mind. A research library may help in supplying building blocks that a thought experiment can help to organize. Yet the most important ideas are often the simplest ones, farthest removed from the immediacy of space and time. Our immediate reality can be like a boombox of visual, acoustic, and tactile sensory overload. Focusing beyond it can be very helpful. You naturally do this as you're drifting off to sleep, so if you can, why not document creative inspiration in the process? Everything advances truth within a context. Organizing the contexts to most effectively advance the broadest truth is the goal. Trust is respected. When you make yourself vulnerable, you increase the power of the other party, though recognizing that all parties are ultimately one. When they reciprocate with love, you both grow. This is an operative dynamic of creativity, curiosity, experimentation, improvisation, collaboration, and generosity. Your limited paradigm of consciousness is a gift to help you grow into a more loving soul. Cooperate by focally serving this higher purpose rather than shorter-term objectives. Help yourself to enter a state of daydreaming or distractedness from the physical world so that you can effectively receive higher guidance without violating the sanctity of your current classroom of limited consciousness. If love always prevails in the long run, and we, that love, are a single eternal consciousness, then we don't need to worry about protecting us from ourselves. Yet if you still want short-range protection, then one idea is just to agree to a simple proxy policy superseding all else that, number one, lovelessness, which is inherently transient, is forgiven, thus disempowered, and that number two, lovingness is instead advised. So we have three operative methodologies in physics: Newtonian physics, relativity, and holography, although Newtonian physics and relativity are special simplifications within holography. Love is always the fundamental purpose, and holography is the method. The purpose supersedes the method in the event of a conflict. The heart supersedes the mind, why supersedes how, and ethics prevails in the long run. So why allow short-term destruction in the process of arriving at this predictable outcome? Recapping the arena of advanced physics, we can ask, who are we? And the answer is, a singular being arranged in separate forms. And we can ask, why are we here? And the answer is, to grow in the experience of love, which requires others. And we can ask, how is reality configured? Everything is conscious. A soul is a relatively discrete element of consciousness. Life refers to a possible state of a soul for a duration. States of consciousness beyond matter exist. And love is the highest power and often uses holography. In terms of key books, Biocentrism by Dr. Robert Lanza presents an excellent discussion of the double-slit experiment. His Biocentrism trilogy also raises some excellent introductory points in the context at hand. Biocentrism explains that the alignment of physics constants with life is highly unlikely to be random. Beyond Biocentrism explains that the universe is too small and too young for complex life to randomly develop by pre-holographic physics. And the Grand Biocentric Design explains that consciousness encompasses free will. The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot, which is on Dr. Beer's reading list, presents a very clear explanation of the basis of holography. The book also presents an amazing account of supporting evidence. Nobel Prize winner Dr. Erwin Schrödinger's What is Life presents an early dissection of the matter-life transition and proposes that life is a duration of entropy opposition. This helps to frame the recognition that consciousness and life are not synonymous, that life is just a special case of the broader state of consciousness. The Hidden Messages in Water by Dr. Masaru Emoto illustrates proof of consciousness in non-living matter, with photographic evidence of the correlation between ice crystal formations and directed thought. The effect is not restricted to water. The Secret Life of Plants by Peter Tompkins and Christopher Bird presents evidence of consciousness in plants. The book introduces an abundance of revolutionary research avenues, one of which are strong PhD testimonials from professors at established universities that plants are successfully transforming atomic structures into elements of their preference. Don't be tricked by the cover or the title. This book is a roller coaster that just doesn't stop. And don't be tricked by critics. Read the book and see if you think the critics have resolved all the points it's raised. While I'm not saying that this or any other book is perfect, it presents a practical vision of Earth as an ethics-driven Eden of abundance, which actually does seem to be how all the other species on our planet are thriving, if we weren't primarily focused upon ourselves at their expense. Let's take a look now at our next path of exploration, consciousness research. Understanding the foundation of reality, we can explore its broader nature. What experiences have taken place beyond the conventional limits of consciousness? What has been learned? Both Dr. Stanislav Grof and Dr. John Lilly have published prolifically, and these two books are excellent starting points. In The Adventure of Self-Discovery, Dr. Grof walks through metaphysical capabilities centered upon drug-induced states and special breathing. Now, you could say if people are drugged, their experiences are irrelevant to the true nature of reality, which would be a perfectly valid argument in the absence of the preceding foundation and in the absence of the verifiable metaphysical feats that they are achieving. Dr. Grof overviews knowledge accumulation transcendent of time, space, or advanced skill. In regard to content that does not lend itself to instant verification, the insights at play should at least be initially regarded as profound conjectures, and the observations regarding the cosmos and harmony are especially meaningful. In The Center of the Cyclone, Dr. Lilly explores the nature of consciousness with a sensory deprivation tank, in which he reports seeing, hearing, and feeling other people with him prior to later research involving drugs. A core takeaway from his overall body of study is that all ideas, ultimately positive of course, are actual realities. So what experiences have taken place beyond the conventional limits of consciousness? In addition to verified metaphysical achievements, reports on essentially unlimited aspects of reality have been attained. And what has been learned? Our cosmos is comprised of powerfully vast and creative love. We'll turn now to credible and consistent channeling. What is the character of our soul family? What are some of their cultural values? What specific messages do they have for us? How can we engage with them? Dr. Karen Fraser, a highly credentialed expert on metaphysics, has channeled an extremely loving and supportive group known as the George Collective. Read sequentially, the messages communicate profoundly meaningful, big-picture guidance. Sue Walker, an internationally recognized clairvoyant with decades of experience, leads the channeling of the Ponti. The Ponti are an extremely kind, caring, and intelligent civilization. They reportedly operate 8 bases on Earth, providing information services for our planet's average of 75 to 80 visiting civilizations per day. The Ponti are very adept at online communication through their channelers. They have a website, officialfirstcontact.com, and a Twitter account, Sandia Wisdom, making reference to Sandia Mountain in New Mexico, beneath which one of their bases is located. They have no affiliation with our government's Sandia National Laboratories. The Ponti's website introduces key members by image and name. Daily interaction, often by name, takes place through Twitter, those who recently had a health issue, which is totally understandably impacting this. Cultural background, including a list of key phrases, is available. The Ponti are telepathic, and a telepathy training primer is available for us. I began studying it about a year ago, and formed a telepathy practice group that's been meeting nearly every day since. You don't just look in the phone book to find a telepathy practice group. We see the kind influence of our soul family just in helping us find one another and grow together. Our group has had amazing success. Beyond just telepathy, every single one of us has had a metaphysical contact experience. To me, there's absolutely no doubt whatsoever that the metaphysical is real. Unless metaphysically coordinated, synchronicities with approximate cumulative odds of less than 1 in 2 trillion took place in less than the first week following my previous dream job and committing to this one. Here are highlights of my telepathy practice success that I've posted on Twitter. You may be thinking about methods and controls and so forth, which you should. But that's a key reason to study telepathy yourself, and to prove to your own satisfaction, your own environment, your own setup, that telepathy is in fact real. And it's something that you should be able to clearly do. And when you come to that conclusion, either through your own research, or vicariously through whistleblowers, or looking at the whistleblowers and anecdotally revealing it to yourself, once you realize that that's true, it really changes your outlook. And you can see the parallel with Galileo's time, where in his time, again, there was 1,500 years of consensus as to how physics operated, and all you had to do was drop a couple pieces of wood side by side, and you could begin to undermine that. And these days, the evidence is there. You don't even need to do any new research. What's necessary is the courage. And it's nice to think that the institutions that exist would do this for us, but when you can prove to yourself, or just trust a very strong whistleblower case that that telepathy is real, that the metaphysical is real, then it raises the question, what's the situation with the institutions? And I would propose that not a lot has changed, unfortunately, since Galileo's time, where there are institutions which are not set up to be nimble. So when an institution sets up its charter, the charter tends not to say something like, at a certain stage, we'll self-destruct if this happens, or we'll force ourselves to make a U-turn. The institution tends to project a vision of truth, and it may be the consensus truth at the time, but if that truth does not evolve properly over the course of time, and the institution is not set up to be nimble, then a disparity develops, which just gets worse and worse over time because it hasn't been corrected. Whereas individuals, we recognize that every day could be our last. We could get hit by a bus. Our life may end at any time. And so there's the capacity to exemplify courage. So if you can stand up for the truth on your side, a truth that hasn't been recognized by the world, you can achieve more than institutions are. We're in a difficult situation as a civilization. We're causing mass extinction. Mass extinction, think about what that means. I mean, if genocide is wrong, this is genocide of species after species after species. We may call it heartbreaking, and it should be, but it's more than heartbreaking to those that are the victims. It's heartbreaking to the point of heart being gone. I mean, they're gone. And a little bit here, a little bit there, that's not good enough, especially when there are opportunities to make a better shift forward. And the metaphysical may be one of, or maybe the last remaining area of untapped potential for us to make that type of wholesale U-turn shift and having a decidedly positive impact as immediately as possible on the world around us. And one of the reasons why the metaphysical is so powerful is that metaphysical communication, telepathic communication, takes place through feelings. So when we're using word models in our typical way of navigating the world, those words may or may not reflect how we actually feel. When we're communicating with the feelings themselves, that problem tends to go away. And so the situation lends itself to integrity. When you're practicing telepathy, you want to do so with at least one other person, maybe a small group, people who deeply love one another. So as you're projecting love and you're receiving love, the messages can be transmitted in that process. Another benefit of telepathy is that as we're recognizing the other members of our soul family and seeking to develop a positive, permanent relationship with them, we want to do so in a way that's most respectful. And within our galaxy, telepathy is a more common form of communication than vocalization. So to the extent we can, we want to learn telepathy out of respect. And finally, telepathy at its prime allows for more efficient communication than vocalization. Right now I'm speaking to you through language. It's very linear, like a train, just one word after the next, very one-dimensional. Whereas with telepathy, at its best, there could be the capacity to send an entire message instantaneously, including the visuals and sound. There can also be greater capacity to reach other parties across space, as long as the other party is receptive, and as long as the communication is right-minded. We've talked a lot about telepathy, but before we get back to our primary discussion, I want to concisely address 3 key issues with our civilization's operations to underscore the importance of us shifting direction. The first, as we mentioned a moment ago, is that we are having a severely net negative effect upon Gaia, to the point of mass extinction. The second, more local to our vantage point, is that while we are engaged in self-supporting operations with this net negative effect, we're paying ourselves in shares of the planet that we are destroying. This is circular logic that ultimately amounts to owning nothing. More crucially, Gaia's complex interconnected systems like weather patterns and animal migrations do not lend themselves to this dissection in the first place. But most crucially, knowing that Gaia is conscious and immensely important in consideration of her size and her mass, she is not a party to what is being done with herself. And as Aboriginal cultures can easily tell us, we can't own a title deed to Mother Earth any more than we can to our human mother. And the last point, which seems trite to even address relative to what we're doing to our mother, is that in addition to the title deeds ultimately being keyed to nothing in the end, they're vulnerable to being keyed to nothing in the process. The only value of a fiat currency is the number in circulation, which is an arbitrary decision. Tangible material, by comparison, seems more reliable, and I'm invested accordingly. Yet the holographic model of the universe enables matter and energy scarcity to be eliminated. So in a fully practical way, care for everyone through love is the most lasting value, which is how it should be. And with that being the case, why not bypass the intermediate tragedies of manipulation and destruction of Gaia and ourselves, and put our primary practical focus upon love directly? Let's return to the Ponti. For at least 4 years, the Ponti have been publicly discussing what's known as official first contact, or formalized introductions between us and our soul family, as being planned for autumn of 2021. Official first contact would certainly be an opportunity to apologize for the mass extinction that we have caused, and to accept any gracious assistance that may be offered in helping to clean up the mess that we have made. While the character of our soul family is loved to the highest degree, please understand that we don't deserve a party. We are immensely blessed just to share the knowledge that our broader, wiser, much more loving family exists. Life is full of surprises, can't you tell? One of which is that I didn't expect coloring books to be valued components of my research library, but hindsight is always 20/20. It actually makes perfect sense for our soul family to be especially interested in engaging with kindergartners, considering their distinct likability and open-mindedness, their inquisitiveness about truth, their obsession with learning as opposed to stubborn habits, assertiveness against wrongdoing, their motivation through enjoyment of living as opposed to fear of dying, their wonder and appreciation, their bravery in navigating what to them is a new world, their lifetime leadership potential, their commitment to the long-range consequences of their choices now, commitment to common sense over bureaucracy, reliance upon collaborative trust as opposed to operational isolation, their evaluation of the heart over the mind, the focus upon big-picture accuracy instead of the precision of peripheral details, their creativity and inclusiveness, their innate affinity to love, their desire to improve the world, their allegiance to service over money, their freedom to serve as opposed to commitments made in the past, and their very strong educational success as a consequence of productive play. And I'm completely serious when I say that these are key resources in understanding the culture of our broader family. We have a common interest and humor. Though we don't want to be superficial, it's awesome to see early images of those from other places. And remember when we talked about other aspects of reality that may not always be immediately evident to our senses? Not only are the Sasquatch credibly reported to be real, as we'll discuss later, but their nature is pretty much the exact opposite of how they're broadly characterized. They're visionary, valiant, and extremely intelligent. Their version of high-tech is to work in harmony with the miracles of nature, which makes our tech look like extractions of long-range ecological debt by comparison. The Sasquatch coloring book, with almost no words, clearly conveys their hearts as gentle giants. Let's turn to the next channeler. From a crisis point in his life, Neil Donald Walsh began receiving detailed channeled responses to his questions written out to God. His Conversations with God series is an exceptional bridge between institutional Christianity, which unfortunately has been highly victimized by church and state conflicts spanning centuries, and channeled testimony that maintains consistency with modern consciousness research. James Gilliland has channeled 2 books by Ezekiel, the contemporary name of Ezekiel from the Bible. Looking at these titles, you may be wondering about the one becoming gods. Keep in mind that consciousness illustrates that we are all one being, whose character is ultimately perfect love. Wouldn't that be what can be called God? Using the term God for reference relative to a Western audience, being as God created you is not blasphemy. Stating that God is powerless to stop torturing you throughout all of eternity is reportedly offensive. As we discussed, all of reality is a single consciousness of love, present within different states. If we agree that God is all-powerful and that you have free will, these both cannot be true unless you are a version of God. Now, I would like to address the fact that I almost didn't recommend becoming gods, but for a reason we haven't discussed yet. Channelers can and do make honest mistakes, and it's important to filter everything through your heart. The objective of channeling is not to be a parlor trick, but to deliver truth, and the process may draw upon building blocks of the information to which the channeler has been exposed through ordinary avenues. Our soul family has been grossly defamed in our culture for a long time, and it's not surprising that some of this, though an honest mistake, may appear in a channeler's account. I would just comment, though, that it is crystal clear through Dr. Greer's work that our soul family has been exemplary in their benevolence. Trusting your heart is very important, and I would like to provide an illustration of that point. I'm warning you this may be jarring, so I invite you to be sure you're seated and maybe take a moment before we continue. Are you familiar with the Berenstain Bears? Spelled this way, S-T-E-I-N, yet pronounced stain? I specifically thought about that when I was growing up. Well, the spelling is now S-T-A-I-N, like a stain on a rug. And I don't mean that the spelling has changed. We are now within a timeline in which the spelling has, quote, always been S-T-A-I-N. Some people will tell you that you remembered it wrong. You didn't remember it wrong if it was the truth on your original timeline. The spelling was definitely S-T-E-I-N when I was a child. The disparity between the spelling and the pronunciation was very distinctive. And when I heard about this phenomenon, I laughed and laughed. S-T-A-I-N, come on. That wasn't the case when I was growing up. Perhaps you're from the same timeline, too. This is an example of what's called the Mandela effect. I can't say that every example of the Mandela effect that's out there is necessarily legitimate, but I do remember my own childhood. The point is that retrocausality within quantum physics can, of course, also take place at the macro level. Yet timeline modification is strongly not advised because of potentially extremely messy problems. The point is that it is important to trust your heart. As the metaphysical becomes an increasingly prominent subject, not even the past may be fixed. Navigate reality the way that it is for sure, yet it is crucial to trust your heart. So what is the character of our soul family? What are some of their cultural values? Unconditional love, truth, courage, patience, understanding, growth, happiness, and humor. What specific messages do they have for us? You are far, far more valuable and powerful than you've been told. Like the rest of creation, you are an incarnation of God. Love is ultimately unstoppable. How can we engage with them? Read, chat on Twitter, join a telepathy practice group, but most of all, grow the love in your heart and focus upon service. We'll turn now to Aboriginal experience. How broad is Aboriginal expertise with our soul family? What can we discover? Who are our closest genetic relatives, and what are their messages for us? The Ponti are affiliated with the co-hosts of the Infinite Star Connections podcast, which has featured Zuni Pueblo elder Clifford Mahudi. Elder Mahudi has also been introduced directly by the Ponti within their children's coloring book series. Elder Mahudi directly attests to his tribe's extensive knowledge associated with the Star People in a brief trailer for the upcoming documentary, Conscious Contact, Full Disclosure. Another guest of the podcast, who also has been retweeted through the Ponti's account, is Sunbo Truebrother. Sunbo has approximately 4 decades of experience with Indigenous elders and is well connected with the Sasquatch. The Sasquatch Message to Humanity presents guidance from the Sasquatch elders. The first 2 books of the trilogy were channeled by Sunbo, and the third through a range of communicators. The Sasquatch are our close relatives with 95% of the same DNA. Their loving gift of crucial, timely, and voluminous guidance for us should be heeded very seriously. You'll want to begin with Book 1 on the history of Gaia, which, shall we say, is different from what we've been told. Book 2 then walks through interdimensional physics, and Book 3 provides resources for a better future. In coordinating with our extended family, you always want to see the soul. This series is a beautiful gift on a silver platter from the most loving of souls. If we want to know answers to deep questions, we have to be willing to receive them when they are handed to us on a silver platter. So let's review. How broad is Aboriginal expertise and what can we discover? A wealth of wisdom is available if implemented within the framework of Gaia's conventions instead of our own. Who are our closest genetic relatives? The Sasquatch are certainly one of them. What are their messages for us? First, Gaia's history. Secondly, the dimensionality of reality. And thirdly, solutions for our future. Let's address contact testimonials. I won't spend much time on this because the matter of proof to me is better settled through the organization and irrefutability of the whistleblower case. Yet the body of less structured contact testimonials deserves mention. Extensive contact experiences are presented in Dr. Greer's long, content-rich book, Contact, Countdown to Transformation. The term Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, or CE5, refers to encounters proactively requested by those on Earth, and his documentary of the same name presents photos and video resulting from these requests. The Ambassador Program is a place where you can interact with others in this space and share your experiences while helping to sponsor the cause of broader awareness of the importance of our soul family. And finally, Inviting ET, written by the Ponti's primary channel, Sue Walker, and her husband, Reverend White Otter, presents guidance on planning a CE5 experience and addresses their experiences. You have to love the humility of Sue Otter and the Ponti. At the bottom of page 17 of the print version is a quick quote from Tini, the Ponti expert on telepathy, addressing the purpose of life. Let's round out this list with the Fermi paradox, to which I alluded in our second and third videos, without knowing it by that name at the time. In a simplified, but I believe fair way, the Fermi paradox can be posed as this. With the mathematical certainty that our cosmic family is real and can engage with us, why is the supporting evidence not obvious? The question is simply this: which one is the stronger body of evidence? The collective universe, or opaque earthly institutions with some already dubious reputations? If this isn't obvious enough, let's follow the motivations. What is the foremost survival need of each? In the case of the collective universe, love as the glue that sustains long-range order. In the case of earthly institutions and bureaucracies, funding to keep up with short-term expenses. So again, with the mathematical certainty that our cosmic family is real and can engage with us, why is the supporting evidence not obvious? The answer, as discussed in our previous video, is because we believe in institutional transparency that obviously does not exist. Or more concisely, because we haven't demanded it yet. I invite you to rewatch the previous video titled Truth that elaborates. Another analogy to consider is a high school class. Unlike a kindergarten class where the children just work together as appropriate and solve things, a high school class may elect a president. All right, but what does that president preside over? Doesn't the principal have more power? Or any teacher? Or say even the janitor? They're the ones locking the doors at night. And none of this actual staff is elected. Correspondingly, the most influential people on Earth can unfortunately buy influence, such that you don't even need to be informed who they are. On the other hand, metaphysics has no limits, except to ultimately support ethics. And its available full transparency intertwined with unconditional love is an ideal mode of social operation. At the end of the day, scarcity is not reality. Abundant matter and energy are available if we decide to live collaboratively with Gaia. This is the future we can have, and it is not theory. It is the way the universe actually works. The fact that we have a sustained universe proves that unity ultimately prevails. So let's align. It's an easy decision. Now, before you get to thinking this is too new age, the reality of pan-consciousness is established knowledge among indigenous people. Search the internet for native, aboriginal, or indigenous wisdom. Check it out. And this point has been in plain sight for more than a quarter century, within the lyrics of the signature Disney song from the film Pocahontas, to which I'll link at the end of this video. This is reality. This is where the answers are. What you create from here is up to you.